Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Creighton University, the Americans with Disabilities Act committee here at Creighton, and especially my colleague, Dr. Barbara Brock, who's the other co-editor of that special issue. She didn't mention that, but she's the other co-editor with it, for putting this in motion and having me be a part of this today. It's truly an honor to be asked to speak and to contribute to disability awareness issues at Creighton University and hopefully in the larger Omaha area, as we have some representatives from other universities and colleges here. A little bit about me, a little bit more about me and why I'm here. I'm not a person with a disability, so I don't know directly what life with a disability is like. I don't directly, experientially know what the perspectives of a life with disabilities are. And I clearly do not and cannot speak for individuals with disabilities. It's just not what I can do. But because of some events that I'll talk about, one in particular that started a set of activities within my career over time, I've come to understand some of those perspectives and the issues. And I've worked as an individual without a disability to try to bring about changes for people with disabilities in predominantly non-disabled institutions, like my university and my professional organization in special education, the Council for Exceptional Children. So, one of those stories. Shortly after I became a professor, one of my students came to my office, Sandy, and she was upset. And, I could see it, and she wanted to talk. And she wanted to come in, and she wanted to close the door, which was not usual for her. So, what's up? So, Sandy was a student in the elementary education program. And one of her professors in her courses questioned if she could be a teacher. And this was a reading methods course, a literacy methods. And he said to her, well, the literature says that there's supposed to be a lot of oral literature in classes that you're supposed to read to your students so they can become better teachers. How are you going to do that? Because you've got learning disabilities and you don't read out loud in class. You always ask for these materials ahead of time. And if I give you something in class, you won't read it. And so how are you going to do that? How can you be a teacher? And Sandy was this woman who I had in a class in the summer when I first started, and she was working with me on a research project. We were developing HyperCard. Remember HyperCard from the old days when Barb said I'd been around for like 30 years? So remember HyperCard stacks? We were doing a HyperCard project, and she was doing the programming on it. I would say, well, do this and do that, and she would take care of it. So it's very sharp, very personable, good abilities. And why couldn't she be a teacher? Sandy was a woman who, when she was 18, had a stroke, and as a result had paralysis or difficulty moving one side of her body, which affected her ability to walk. She walked with a cane, she walked with a gait. It affected her fluency of speech, so she was less fluent, and she acquired learning disabilities as a result. Prior to that point, no disabilities, has a stroke and acquires disabilities afterwards. So yeah, she could do some things, couldn't do other things, but why couldn't she be a teacher? And why would it be that she would have to read out loud, I wondered. Don't they have books on tape back then? And couldn't you bring in volunteers to a class to have that oral part? Wouldn't there be some other something that could come across that would be valuable to students by having somebody like Sandy be the teacher in that class? So it was one of those moments of those kind of like epiphanies, this kind of professional level one. So here's this interesting idea about who gets to decide. We as teacher educators, in my part of the university and in professional life, we're supposed to act as gatekeepers to the profession. So let's make sure we protect it, have good people in the roles so that our students in schools can learn and do good things. But isn't there something that the person gets to make a decision? If you can make it into a university, you're smart enough, you can be admitted to a program, don't you get some sort of say in there too? So wondered about this. Went down the hall and we started this line of research on teachers with disabilities. as we had at Duluth, lots of people who had gone through the program. We could say, yeah, I remember that student, and I know somebody else, and we started to interview those people. Second part, Barb mentioned a little there, was the work within the Council for Exceptional Children. Here's the premier special education organization in the United States, so one that deals with disabilities. You know, it's advocated for laws, advocated for improvement in education, yet had an awfully hard time dealing with members who have disabilities. You know, it's my colleague on the book, Ron Anderson, the late Ron Anderson, was president of CEC, and he was a person with a disability, used a wheelchair. And he worked his way up, was president of Student CEC, later became the first president of CEC, I think with a disability, or at least a known disability. And he had the hardest time getting this organization to understand and to accept that its members could have disabilities and that's okay, and that they should be supported, and that the advocacy work that went on for students should also be extended to them. But it didn't happen always within the organization. You know, the headquarters weren't accessible easily to people with disabilities. So Ron asked me to chair a commission that he would put together to look at those issues for CEC. And from that, we wrote the book, and we went on to the Educators with Disabilities Caucus, and I kept it alive for a little bit until finally we found a way for CEC members with disabilities to take over that leadership role within it. So that's a little bit about me and those parts here, these issues that have come out, and I would like to talk about today in my presentation here. Overview for my talk, 2 parts. I want to talk about different ideas about disabilities. Some descriptions of these different ideas, these different ways of thinking about disabilities and the effects of them on the lives of people, and some of the implications for diversity efforts. Because it seems, like in many places, that disability isn't often or always a part of diversity efforts within an institution. For the longest time within CEC, it was something separate. They had black caucuses and American Indian caucuses and Asian American caucuses within CEC, but they didn't have disabilities, and when they did have that as a group, it was sort of separate. Till later it's been moved in. So why is it that disability isn't a part of this honoring of differences? Why doesn't that take place? I think there's some reasonable explanations that come to us from the different ways that we think about disabilities. Second part of my talk is the so what part. So what can we do to foster opportunities for people with disabilities? And 3 pieces here: consideration about issues of justice, some ideas about education, and to close with some advice about this. Okay, first idea about disabilities. It's sort of a typical or layperson view, probably somebody who didn't graduate from Clayton, or wasn't one of my students at UMD, or just a kind of a typical person who equates the person with the disability. The person equals the disability. Well, how does this come about? Well, think about it. I mean, when I'm walking down the street and I see somebody that I don't know, and I make a quick comparison. I take a little look and, sort of size them up in a little bit in some sort of way and do a little calculus there and figure something out and focus on something that's salient or relative to me, interest, whatever. Well, if I have this kind of view and I'm going down the street and I see somebody with a disability, I might focus on what's missing or what's different. Oh, that person can't walk. They're using a wheelchair. That person can't see. They've got a guide dog. I focus on that difference part of it there. And then that becomes the defining trait, partly because it's a short-term situation. What am I going to capture? Just one little part that's significantly different from me as a person who maybe doesn't have disabilities. So I look on that as the defining trait. Well, who wants to be characterized by one aspect of themselves? I mean, not most of us, except maybe the erudite ex-professor. I could accept that if you claimed that as that for me. With this typical view, like in all of the views, the language reflects that perspective. So we get words or terms like the handicapped. I mean, I don't even think about the personness of it. I lump them all together in a group. And I use a term that we don't use much nowadays in our society that goes back to that idea of begging and charity and this lower status position for people with disabilities. The handicapped. Or I might say the blind musician. I don't focus on that person as a musician per se, but the blindness. I've got to put that up front there. You notice this in the newspapers sometimes. We did a study of media portrayals of people with disabilities. And any time George Wallace got mentioned in any article we came about, it was always George Wallace, wheelchair-bound, or wheelchair-bound George Wallace, or paralyzed George Wallace. There's always something about him. It was always connected, like some Homeric epithet or something. So we focus on that part. Other language, suffers from. Not that anything about a disability could be okay, but they're suffering from. Well, maybe they are sometimes, but a lot of people with disabilities wouldn't necessarily say that it's suffering. Or wheelchair-bound, to go back to that one. Here's a little side story. For some people with disabilities, being in a wheelchair, especially after you've acquired a disability, is a limitation that you would want to change. Think of Christopher Reeve. Breaks his neck, paralyzed, uses the wheelchair. It was not a place that he wanted to be. It wasn't something that was the source. He wanted to get up and walk again. But for others, a wheelchair is freedom. It's their way they can get around. A little story that I read recently. A mother was trying to get a motorized wheelchair for her daughter. And nobody was going to do the assessment and try to figure out the needs for this. And say, I don't think it's going to work. We're just not going to do this. Finally, somebody said, okay, we'll try it out. And the girl gets into the motorized wheelchair, and she can control the movement of it with a little stick there. And the girl starts moving around on her own. And she's laughing. And the mother said, as part of the story, now I understand why they call it a joystick. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to look at there. And sometimes from this perspective, when a person has a disability and does something, then that person's really surprised. My gosh, you can be a student here at Clayton University and you've got this disability? You've got a job? You're married? You've got kids? Things that are taken for what's normal are seen as special from this perspective that views somebody with a disability as less, as missing something, when it's just what people normally do. The implication for diversity, I think, is that diversity as a value doesn't really honor what's viewed as unfortunate or missing. If you think about diversity celebrations or diversity activities, let's celebrate something bad. No, you don't. So if you're viewing this condition of a disability as something that's not to be desired, that's something that's unfortunate, you don't really want to celebrate it. So maybe let's put it off to the side. Let's not have it be a part of that from this perspective. A second view, and I'd call this one the enlightened one, and not with any sort of meanness, but it's a nice one, sort of a politically correct one, where the person doesn't equal the disability. And there are really kind of two versions of that I've seen around. One of them is that the person is just the same as everybody else. I don't even see the disability in the person. They're just a person. I don't even see the disability, even though they're in a wheelchair or they're blind or it's a very visible condition that they have. I don't see that. Just like they might say, I don't even see the person's color or race. I don't see their religion. I don't see their gender. They're just people. We're all people. We're all the same. I'm not so sure. I think there are some of those characteristics that are defining. I think there are differences that are based on gender. I'm not going to go as far as Larry Summers at Harvard University to say about what women can and can't do, but there are differences in the perspectives. There are differences from the perspectives of different religious beliefs. There are different perspectives based on one's racial, ethnic, cultural background. So to deny that part, I think, is something missing. To say it's not something. We don't even have to think about it. Second one is that, yes, they are a person first, but there's also a disability. So you focus on the person, that individual, but then realize that there's something that goes along, just like gender goes along, religion, race, socioeconomic status. And then maybe it can be something that's more matter of fact, as it's a part of this person's life. And maybe this comes with more contact. You start to know somebody with a disability, and then can start to, you talk about things and you do things. It's there. If you're a person without a disability and you have contact with a person with a disability, you start to learn things if you didn't know. So my colleague Ron Anderson, the person I mentioned before, was up in Duluth teaching for us one summer. And Ron used a wheelchair, and then after class, he got a flat tire in his wheelchair. So, we had to go find, after work, a place where he could get his tire fixed, where he could get a tube and go into a hardware store in this place. And, never thought much about wheelchair maintenance, but kind of a matter-of-fact thing. I can't even change a bicycle tire yet. There's Ron going around finding this and popping the wheel off his wheelchair and fixing it up. Or you start to share the experiences as you go through life. So one time we were in Washington, D.C., and we were supposed to go to dinner with some people. They had made the arrangements. And we went to this restaurant. And darned if there weren't stairs down to the restaurant. And here's Ron in his wheelchair. And we looked around. There's no elevator. What's going to go on with it? And so he sent me in. I had to go in and say, well, I've got this guy. He's supposed to be a part of this meeting. What are we going to do? And they said, oh, you go around the back. Go out around the back, around the corner. There's a door. You go in there. And I must admit, petty feelings here. The guy who organized the dinner was not one of my favorite people. So I thought, yes, this guy screwed up. And we're going to have to do these things like I read about. We're going to have to go past the garbage cans in the back, and it's going to be really demeaning, and I get to see what this is like. It wasn't. It was a nice door. It was clear. It's a good walkway. It's a fine way to get in. But was able to start to see what was it like, for that by sharing those experiences with it. The language, reflects that person part, the person first. So maybe the person with disabilities, the teacher who is deaf, emphasizing that individual first, and then the condition as something else if it should be brought up, which it might sometimes. That's kind of good language to use. It's direct. It's less value laden. It's not putting in terms like suffering or bound. Implications for diversity, though, is, especially with that first position, they're just the same. We're all the same. I don't see anything. We're just all people. Diversity as a value doesn't really honor what's viewed as the same. That's part of the diversity, the difference. It's difference. It's diverse. So we honor the different aspects of it. But if something is the same, well, gee, it's everyday stuff. We don't honor everyday stuff on a regular basis. So maybe that's why diversity doesn't make it in there. A third view. Kind of an environmental perspective here. And I try to make this quasi-equation there, that little strange symbol between person and environment is sort of to reflect the idea that person interacts with the environment and maybe causes a disability. Okay, there's an interaction. Conditions of the world, physical conditions, by nature, by man-made situations, by culture. There are conditions of the world that can make the abilities that a person has problematic. Okay. Think of an opposite example. If the world were flat, basically flat, or people decided never to use stairs or never had stairs, always did ramps, did buildings on one floors, or always had elevators, people who used wheelchairs would be at an advantage. In marathons, the wheelchair racers go first because they're faster than the runners. Put them off. Motorized wheelchair, I've heard, can go maybe about 8 miles an hour. That's faster than the normal walking pace of about 3 miles an hour. So in a world where there is nothing to impede or to slow down the movement of a wheelchair, a person who used a wheelchair could be at an advantage over somebody who was walking. But we don't live in that kind of world. So the environment, the nature of that environment, creates some sort of barriers that make difficulties for the participation of somebody in the world. If we had a society that didn't have a written language, a person's cognitive abilities to read or to process, to read written language wouldn't be an issue. Learning disabilities, dyslexias would not be an issue in a society that did not have a written language, because there was nothing that sort of created this challenge, this potential barrier there. So if conditions are different or can be adjusted, the effects of the person's capabilities may be adjusted in some way, made worse, made better in this one. The emphasis then is on changing the environment within this kind of perspective. The American Association on Mental Retardation, starting about 1992, started having a different classification of mental retardation. Before, and still to some extent, it focuses on within individual capabilities. The sort of difference of cognitive ability, general cognitive ability, and the person's adaptive behavior, the ability to work in the world. So things within the individual. And they use terms that classified it in the old days as educable, mentally retarded, trainable, mentally retarded. So the degree, what could that person do in an education, a school situation? Or more recently, and still to some extent, mild mental retardation, moderate, severe, or profound, looking at that within the individual. They have a classification system and a scale and assessment system that focuses now on the pattern and intensity of supports needed to enable a person to participate in valued settings and activities. So an idea of looking at mental retardation in an interactive perspective. And so what can we do? What kind of supports how much support does somebody need, the intensity, the level, the frequency, in order for that person to act and participate like other people would in the society? And then have a classification that looks at intermittent support. A little bit, small amounts here or there, time-limited basis, limited, more extensive support needed, or more pervasive support for that person to be able to do the things that a person does in the world. So shifting off of that solely on the individual and what the abilities of that person are to how do I change and alter the environment so that that person can be involved with other people. Implications for diversity. Diversity as a value doesn't really honor changing differences. It used to be with diversity we would talk about the melting pot, or early days of the United States and in some other places. Let's merge things together. Let's have people be the same. Now we talk more about, at least some years ago, the salad bowl. They're separate pieces. They're distinct, and they blend together in a nice combination. So we don't want to change differences with diversity, whereas this environmental view is one that's looking at trying to change it. Let's change the world so that they are functioning more like others. The fourth perspective, more of an activist and a rights-based view. Here, the diversity and the disability is an important part about that person. It's an important part of that person's life. It's something that's valued by the individual, that the lifestyle is valid. It's okay to live a life where I can't hear. Just put things on, open captioning, provide me the sign language interpreters. Nothing wrong with me that I can't hear sound that way, just change things for them. I don't need to change. I don't have to try to be normal. That disability is an important part of that person's life. The other parts, the barriers, the discrimination, the things that keep me from doing what I'm supposed to do in order to be a person just like everybody else, those things need to change. Me as a person with a disability doesn't have to change. It's an important part of my life. More possibly with people who have had disabilities for longer times, ones that they've lived their whole lives with, sometimes with acquired ones, not necessarily. Again, Christopher Reeve, that lifestyle as somebody with a disability wasn't maybe as valued. The example, Sandy, the woman who acquired a stroke, she said later that, she wouldn't change it. She wouldn't change this if she could, which was kind of surprising. So this idea for somebody without a disability can be kind of different. Gee, you wouldn't change that situation if you would? Why is that? The language, kind of goes back to that earlier one, but emphasizes, put that disability first as a way to show the importance for that person, a disabled person. That part that's this defining for them, the disabled persons. The implications for diversity, here's where I think the punchline comes. All of what diversity as a value honors is present. Different perspectives. The perspectives of people with disabilities who see this as a valuable part of their life are different. And it's something that we can learn from. A way of life with a disability, really can get others to think about, well, what does it take to be a person? What parts are important? How can they be changed? That's something that's to be valued and to be seen, just as we do with cultural and ethnic diversity, different ways of thinking about things. Possibly a culture. So people talk, is there a disability culture, maybe within the deaf community, with interpretation and dance and literature and the language. That's different culture there. History and heroes. So now, I'll cue you, Tammy. Don't worry. Don't jump to it. Yeah. How many people have heard of Ed Roberts? Show of hands. Know who Ed Roberts is? Oh boy. So Ed was probably the most seminal figure in the United States in recent times in disability rights. And certainly within the disability rights movement and the independent living movement. He was an individual who had polio as a kid and basically had very little functioning below the neck. Very little control. Used a wheelchair, iron lung at night, respirator during the day. Could make things happen by switches that were puffing and sucking to make things move. Parents helped him graduate from high school. He had to fight to get through high school. They had to get the physical rehabilitation to be accepted for the Phi-Ed requirement that the high school had, and then they had to get rid of the driver's ed requirement. Went to community college. Rehabilitation services in California were reluctant to spend resources on this guy because if you looked at him, if you go back to that, let's take a look at this person and make this quick judgment. They thought, well, what's this guy going to do? He's in this wheelchair and basically he doesn't move very much on his own. What's this guy going to be able to do? And didn't want to spend a lot of money on him, rehab services. But went through community college, went to Berkeley. UC Berkeley in the 60s. So, you people who are old enough to know, those radical times, the 60s, civil rights movement, all the stuff going on there. It's in Berkeley, and they were a part of this, the rights movement, women's rights, fighting the war, civil rights, and disability rights starts to become a part of that. And to be a student at Berkeley with his conditions, lots of things had to change. I mean, they had to take a room or a floor on the hospital ward there for his dorm room. He couldn't live in a dorm like everybody else, but he could live on campus and go there. He needed academic supports, because he wouldn't be able to take notes. He needed note takers. He needed academic services. That's the start of student services and assistants that come in school. So you folks who are doing it, it's because of Ed. Curb cuts. Here's a guy coming in a wheelchair and needs to get from one place to another, and other people too. How do you do this? Got curb cuts. Ed Roberts died in 1995, and as I was reading one sort of eulogy or article in memory of him, he said, like sometimes when somebody's famous, they get a statue up here and there, and something happens. Well, every street corner in the United States basically has a memorial to Ed Roberts because of the curb cuts. He's the guy who got them all started, and then cutting them out there. Later on, he started this Center for Independent Living that started the independent living movement. That's now, these centers are around the United States. Met Jerry Brown, who was governor of California at that time, and was so impressed that he hired Ed Roberts to run that rehabilitation agency for the state of California, the one that years ago had said, no, we don't think we should give you money because we don't think you're going to amount to anything. So he comes later to run that organization for you. Here now, we'll show you a clip. This is a little bit fuzzy. It's coming off a CD, but especially if you haven't had any exposure to Ed Roberts, here's a little look, and Ed himself talking about life.
In order to change the old, they gotta be the lovers, they gotta be the friends, they gotta be seen in a very natural way. Disability is a part of life, and some of us are going to have it. Some of us are going to have it older. But whenever it comes, our job, you and I, is to make sure that we know that we don't have to put somebody in an institution. We can have high expectations of them in their future. And by helping them begin to take control of their own lives, they can go back to work, or go to work, or dream what they want to dream, and make them.
Thanks, Tammy. So Ed Roberts, we better turn that mic down in the back. So Ed Roberts, a figure like a Martin Luther King for disability rights, who's probably not known at the same level, obviously not known at the same level up there. So those four perspectives and different ways of how they might affect how we view diversity. With one where somebody can see this as a valid way of life, it's something, they have the different perspectives, it's something that's honorable, it's something that doesn't necessarily have to be changed. The conditions of discrimination, the barriers, those change, but not that kind of life, as a way then that can contribute to diversity issues. I want to make this transition now between the ideas about disabilities and the so what part. What can we do with it? So I want to set the context. Here I'm giving this talk at Creighton University, Americans with Disabilities Act organization, and how might disabilities be viewed within this situation. So it suggested that I look at the Creighton's mission, and I picked out a couple points here that I thought were relevant to this. Great mission statement. Parts there that didn't quite fit with this topic today, this talk, but here's a couple ones here. So, service to others, the importance of family life, the inalienable worth of each individual, and appreciation of ethnic and cultural diversity are core values of Creighton. If I were a person with a disability, how much would I be able to see myself within that part of it there, within those values? The inalienable worth of each individual, but would I think of it as being embedded within the ethnic and cultural diversity? I don't know, again, because I can't speak as somebody with a disability, but I would think not. It's not a clear enough connection for it. When I looked for disabilities on the Creighton diversity page, I didn't see anything. And so lots of organizations there, a variety of them, of different ethnic, cultural groups there that was very rich. But I didn't see a reference there about diversity. And it could be that, I know university web pages are hard to figure out where things are, and everybody's got a logic that says, darned if this isn't the best arrangement for, web pages there, and that makes no sense to somebody else who comes in the outside. So maybe I didn't see it there. Where is it? And I think that there is a group there, but could it be a part of the diversity part? Another part, relevant from the mission statement. And this one's, I think, fairly clear. Creighton's education is directed to the promotion of justice. In looking at the websites, I think there are few institutions that are as well developed in terms of the pursuit or the working towards justice than Creighton University. The institution that I was familiar with at the University of Minnesota Duluth in no way had as extensive a look at social justice and efforts to better the world. I think it's refreshing and heartening. I think it's wonderful. This is a living, evolving tradition, I would suspect, that's here. So justice, okay. That's good. So maybe that's our entree into this here. But what would justice in the education of students with disabilities and also the employment of staff and faculty members with disability, what would that be like? What would justice be in the education or employment of individuals with disabilities at Creighton? That's the part to consider. Well, I don't think there's going to be a clear, easy answer for it. A wonderful book called Disability and the Dilemmas of Education and Justice by Christensen and Rizvi. And I love this quote, and I've used it in lots of other ways, about what is justice? What constitutes justice here? So this book is based on the view that while notions of justice have always been implicit in the discussion of the theoretical, policy, and practical issues concerning the education of people with disabilities, these notions are seldom made explicit and subjected to sustained analysis. While there is widespread recognition that as a group, people with disabilities have been subjected to social practices which are fundamentally unjust, there is a lack of clarity on what constitutes injustice and what would constitute a socially just community for people with disabilities. So it's not a clear-cut, easy answer. Think of some things that maybe if you're in the area of education, you've come across the inclusion debate. Where should individual students, elementary, secondary students with disabilities be educated in schools in this country and other countries of the world? Should they be in regular classrooms? Should they be in separate settings? What's just there? I don't think there's an easy answer there on that inclusion debate, even though we tend to lean towards one. There can be arguments made on different ideas of what is just and ethical behavior that suggests that a separate setting can sometimes be okay. Take the example from the beginning with Sandy. What is right? Do we protect the profession? Do we protect the individual? What is justice in her situation there? How do we figure that out? So, for fostering opportunities. So it's not for me to say what constitutes justice in the education of students with disabilities at Creighton University. That needs to be developed and constructed by you, the community here. You people here, your colleagues, your peers. You need to figure out for your institution. And again, I think you're up to the task. From what I've seen, Barb has showed me some of the values guiding the education department. What I've seen on the website, if any place is predisposed to being able to come up with this if they wanted to, this is the institution for it. So what would constitute that? And again, it's for you to decide. But I will make some suggestions. You asked me to come here, and you want me to talk about this, so I will. So some points about what it might be, just to guide that thinking. Such justice will not consist of charity or service. These are peers. These are your peers as students. These are your peers as faculty members. These are your peers as staff. It's not a charitable arrangement. It's not a service project that you would provide to somebody else. Just like you probably wouldn't want you wouldn't want to be in the receiving end of a charitable situation by somebody else within your department. Well, sometimes financial aid, things like that, that's okay. But, in terms of basic, how do you function in the world, and in Creighton, you don't want somebody to sort of take care of you like charity or service might suggest. So I don't think it's going to be that. And I think it'll have to comply with laws like Section 504 in the ADA. So the importance of the second, session that we have today. You can't do less. You have to have at least those minimums. You can't say, well, when we construct justice here, we won't pay any attention to those laws. You can't do that. You got those laws as the basic, and they're a pretty decent start to it. But I've got a bias. I've got a bias all along here that I think you should go beyond compliance with the laws. I had a bias in the work that we did with teachers with disabilities. We laid it out in our book. We thought that there could be and should be more teachers with disabilities in schools. It's not to say that any person with a disability could be a teacher, just like not anybody could be a teacher, but that there seemed to be some barriers and things in place that kept more people from being teachers with disabilities, that weren't a part of taking care of what they could do. Sort of think of it yourself there. If you have a prevalence rate of disabilities of about 10%, how many teachers have you had, do you know, in the world who have disabilities? Would it be 1 in 10? 10% of the teachers that you've come across have had disabilities? Cut it down a little. Let's do a 5%, make it a more conservative. 1 in 20 teachers that you've come across? Maybe they've got disabilities you can't see, but most likely you don't have a 5% prevalence rate of teachers with disabilities. Staff members with disabilities? Students with disabilities here at Creighton? I don't know. So, I'm not sure that legal compliance will be enough. Dismal employment outcomes. Gallup polls a few years ago is a reiteration of a poll from earlier about the employment rates and success of people with disabilities. Dismal. Like about 2/3 of people with disabilities not employed or underemployed. So, we have those laws in place. Are they enough to make it happen? I don't think so. I think that we need to go beyond. I think the education should be invitational, anticipating needs and having many accommodations or supports in place normally versus solely providing them only when asked. This is not to say that in all situations, every classroom, every time that you're going on in Creighton, there should be a sign language interpreter in the classroom, just in case somebody needs it. No, it's not a prudent use of resources to capacitize to that extent. But there are lots of small things that somebody can do that makes it more possible. Most institutions, if a student with a disability, a staff member with a disability will come along and ask and request an accommodation or something be different, it'll probably be handled, sure. But think about it. are the implications of always having to ask for something to happen for you, so that you can get what others get easily or without asking. Like if every time you've got to ask for something, the student Sandy, back to that one professor who wondered why she should be a teacher, how could she be a teacher? She would ask for the materials ahead of time, reasonable accommodation. Give them to me so I have more time to read them and I can work on them. Did he do this? No, he didn't always do it. Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. But she would always have to ask, can I have the materials? Do you have these things? Oh, no, I don't have them here. Here, I'll pass something out. Professors are, you think of something at the last minute and you make up a handout for that. But, that didn't work easily in her situation. So, what's it like when you always have to ask and either get or don't always get? The feeling, too, of what it's like to have your needs taken care of, to be treated like others without having to ask might be something interesting. So it's not a disability story, but it's related to this idea of sort of trying to be invitational and having needs met. I've got a brother-in-law who's got this diet, who eats no meat, no fish, no dairy, and no fat. Ornish diet for heart health kinds of things, so no fat. So what do we do when we have people together in our family for dinner and I've got to cook? So do I invite him to our house and say, okay, here, we've got a great meal, do 7 courses, really interesting things, and Tim, here's some raw vegetables and here's some plain pasta for you. And we're all enjoying the food and he's got something else that's different. Man, that doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right. If he's coming to my house, if I'm inviting him in to this, I've got to try to treat him like the others. So I've got to try to accommodate for that menu and try to have things that he's eating like everybody else, and we eat those things, and there are ways of making the changes. Sure, it's harder for me, but I can do it, and he feels, he's a part of it. He's a part of that celebration because he's treated like others. Some things are different. Sure, he won't eat the roast beef, but he'll get the portobello mushroom that looks like a piece of beef, kind of, things like that. So, a side point here about, well, how could you sort of easily do this? The idea of universal instructional design, or universal design for learning, as it's sometimes called, kind of related to that environmental view. So universal design is something that comes out of architecture in the design world. The design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. So let's have it be that we've got curb cuts. Somebody doesn't have to ask for help. They can just go about it. We've got those buttons on doors. Push that button on a door and the door opens automatically. Or an electronic eye will open it for me. Changing the nature of that pathway outside the student center, going from those cobblestones to a smoother brick makes it easier for people to move around. You've got some incredible slopes there that people have to deal with, and don't quite resolve that. But doorways that are wide enough, push bars on doors rather than handles that you have to turn. So if you change the environment, people can go and act and do things on their own. Buses that can accommodate wheelchairs rather than somebody having to call up and say, would you send the special bus? It doesn't come on time, or you're late, or you have to do these things extra, rather than just, oh, I want to go to the store, I'll go down to the corner, I'll get on the bus just like everybody else and go off someplace. Universal design. Universal design, instructional design, a pedagogical analogy. How can you make what you do in teaching more open to a variety of different capabilities and abilities? Won't handle everything, but you can build in a lot of it. So, and these qualities should be built into the instructional design and operating systems of educational materials. They should not have to be added on later. So, when I teach or give a lecture, it would be one thing if I just talked to you. But I try to give you something else to look at, a PowerPoint, because for some of you, reading this was going to be easier than listening to me. Even myself, I would rather see some things besides hearing them than just hear them. So if I talk and I put these up in a class, if I'm teaching, then people don't necessarily have to ask for other kinds of things. Can I have your notes ahead of time? Well, your notes are coming up there on the screen. I can get that. Or if I printed the slides, the PowerPoint slides out for members in my class, especially in a situation where, they're going to be sitting down and writing a lot of stuff. I give them the notes. They don't have to worry about the writing. They can listen to what I'm saying. Makes it a little bit easier in terms of that instructional design. A story from our research on teachers with disabilities of what was not universal instructional design. One of our informants was a woman who was blind. She was in a doctoral program and talking about how she was having such difficulties in statistics classes. And she was taping all the lectures. So she went back to the lectures and tried to listen to figure out, why is she just not getting this and doing poorly on tests? So she listened to the lecture, and it was, like, the person was writing on the board. And as the person wrote on the board, they wrote on the board. And they never said what was written on the board. So here this woman who was blind could record everything that was going on in class except the explanations of the equations. And here's how we're deriving this, and here's how they relate to each other. So not universal design. You explain it while you put it up on the board. That's more universal design. When I teach in other countries, give lectures, I have to change the nature of my language. Otherwise, I'll be up there, I'll have a great time being in another place, but they won't get anything. I have to speak more slowly and distinctly. I have to think about the nature of the words that I choose. And then they can engage and understand what I'm talking about. One last example, when I would do videos, if possible, I would turn the captioning on in any video that I was running in class, even if somebody did not ask for that accommodation. Just to have it sort of be open there with the idea that somebody doesn't have to ask me specifically if I could help it. I could just put those things out. So, an education that should be invitational, and universal instructional design is one way to get to that point. Also, education should be inclusive. That most education, when we're dealing with it, if it's good, we're engaged as individuals. I'm sitting in a class, I'm learning these things, I'm connecting it to my life and what I want to do, my values. I connect it on that individual basis. But that's just me. It's different if my interests and things are out in public for others to see, like in a university class, so that students with disabilities can see themselves, their lives, their concerns in their education that they receive at a place like Creighton, and in ways that can be seen by others. So the things that are important to me are talked about in class. These issues about accommodations or my rights as a person, social security issues, resources, they're involved in it. These are things that are important to me. And I get to have this be a part. Perspectives that are like mine get to be a part of this also, as well as other ones, to learn from them. So, easy. And the message, too, that it's public. A university has this as part of a course. My instructor brings it up, a reading about these kinds of things. An example, makes it that my life is seen by others, too. This part is it's valued, it's important, it's valid. Lots of places that we can put them in. If there are courses that are dealing with issues of civil rights, the disability rights movement, why isn't that a part of it? Ethical debates. Terry Schiavo. What are disability perspectives on that? Kind of condition. Should a person, her right to life be changed or taken away from her? Policies, governmental policies, social security, development policies in other countries, literature, writings by people with disabilities. Can they be a part of what goes on in literature classes? One place, wonderful place to go if you want to get access to those other perspectives on a variety of things in life is the newspaper, magazine Disability Rag, and you can get it off of this website there. So it's a wonderful place to get that perspective that you might not be as familiar with. So commentary, for example, on Terry Schiavo, commentary on movies like $1 Million Baby, with the disability issues that are in there. So as professors, as instructors, as administrators, here's one place where we can get that other perspective brought in pretty well. So an inclusive education. Also, another side point. I'm sorry, I should have done it. There's a disability rag one. I'll give you a second there. Lots of places for that. Also, within professions, there are many groups now engaging in the needs of their members who have disabilities. So in the area of science, the American Association for the Advancement of Science for a long time has had projects dealing with mentors and role models with disabilities. They had a wonderful network, extensive one, of thousands of scientists, a variety of different scientific areas, variety of disabilities, places in the United States that could serve as mentors to high school, college students with disabilities, sources of advice for professors saying, gee, I've got this student with this kind of disability in my chemistry class. I'm worried about safety issues. How do I do this? Getting ideas for that. Places wanting to recruit a more diverse population in their science. So here's one where it kind of comes into the diversity aspect for them. So it's under the Careers for All and Workforce Development. So don't even mention the disabilities. And if you go to that web page, you'll see many projects dealing with students and faculty members, scientists with disabilities, as well as ethnic, racial groups, gender issues there. Another one, kind of interesting, Breaking New Ground Resource Center for farmers who have disabilities out of Purdue University. I love this motto that they had. I wish I had created it myself. Cultivating independence for persons with disabilities in agriculture. Man, it just the joy on your mind if you came up with that slogan, it just would have been something. Apparently lots of farmers acquired disabilities dealing with machinery and these chemicals and other kinds of things. Here's this extensive and long-lived support network for farmers to help them still stay in that profession, and probably for new farmers who have disabilities to enter that world also. By the way, as you're scribbling down all these things, I've got my PowerPoint slides here if you want to catch them later, if you're not getting them off of here, and then somebody at Creighton will have my PowerPoint and be able to move them around. One other one, the Educators with Disabilities Caucus out of the Council for Exceptional Children, for the area of teacher education, teaching. So, go to this website and there are, nice listing of resources to support teachers who have disabilities. They've established a national mentoring program for teachers who have disabilities. Some of the work that I do for the state is in the area of mentoring teachers in low incidence disability areas. But, if you're a teacher who has a disability, there are issues that a person who does not have a disability could not easily help you with. Should I tell my principal about my disability and what I can and can't do? How do I ask for that accommodation? It's not something that somebody who hasn't gone through it will know as easily. So teachers with disabilities there. And probably other professional organizations are getting into this. And so if you belong to some area like English teachers or occupational therapists, social workers, maybe there's something within your organization. Anybody know of any professional group that has something similar as a strong resource for members in that profession, in that field? Homework assignment, like go back, check, find out, your professional organization, see if they have any. Another homework assignment for extra credit, start something there. Take it, build it up. There are needs of those members there that maybe do relate. Okay. Switching now to that final section about advice. These are some ideas that came out of our book on educators with disabilities that we don't have a copy of here. Barb didn't bring hers, I didn't bring mine. I'd go at University Press, I could use the royalties. So out of the different chapters, my colleague Joan Karp did a great job of pulling out different ideas. So here are some ideas, suggestions for individuals with disabilities, students, but they were aimed at students, but they could also work as employees with disabilities within an organization or a university. So to take control over your life, desire to succeed, to strive for your goals and be persistent, to find opportunities that best fit your goals and your needs, to reframe your disability to see it as a positive, to use learned creativity, construct networks for support and personal improvement. Be both independent and interdependent by using people and resources that can help. Ask for the accommodations. We're going to hear that later, that students need to ask for those accommodations. And develop a portfolio of experiences and accomplishments. Might be one way to show how can you do something Somebody later on, might come along and say, well, how can you be a scientist and do that? How can you be a teacher? A portfolio approach that captures examples might be one way to make that case. Some advice for faculty members, also managers, administrators. So the other side there. To ask about each individual's conception of him or herself and his or her disability. Create a campus environment where individuals feel accepted. Encourage all students to actively determine how they best learn and function as students and how to communicate that to others. What is going to help you learn? Figure that out. Ask for that. Allow students to make accommodations and adaptations as they need. Maybe there is a different way of doing something than the way that you've always done, and that's okay. Encourage students to be both independent and interdependent. Create mentor-mentee relationships, within that profession, not necessarily with a person with a disability, but sometimes also. And assist students in building a portfolio of accomplishments. Last parts here, sort of the parting words there. Some characteristics I think that would be useful for developing a just education for students with disabilities at Creighton University. Also came from the book. Again, there's no easy answer. It's going to be a struggle to figure out justice. It's going to be a struggle to figure out situations, and each one's going to be unique, and you do it differently. But here are some guidelines here to think about. Openness to communication. Can I talk to that person? Should I ask that person? What we do from both sides. Ask for the accommodations. Ask about what would help. Being open to that. Being willing to question your ideas and others' ideas about disabilities and education. Just because you've thought that, isn't there a different way of looking at it? Creativity to generate solutions. Sometimes the answers will be clear. Somebody has done something, but a lot of times it's new ground, breaking new ground that you have to go through. Courage on everybody's part to put those solutions to appropriate tests. Okay, what happens if I provide this accommodation? What happens if this person tries out to be a teacher and uses this idea and this approach? And finally, honesty to accept the results of such tests. Sometimes it's going to work out for a given profession or something. Sometimes it's not. There has to be an honesty. So the openness, the willingness, the creativity, the courage, the honesty, those would be those 5 words that I would leave with you. Thank you very much for this chance to talk to you. Appreciate it.